Hi, Jill.
Hi.
It's been wonderful spending a few hours with you, and I really do want to mention something that I mentioned at dinner, which is whereas Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner were kind of the stand-up comedians, right now I think you have emerged as the most quotable comedian in the United States. But I have a matter of personal business that I would like to start with.
Okay.
One of your episodes called, I think, Fasting and Furious.
Oops. Sorry, I turned a Torah into a roast turkey.
Right. I just want to know personally, and as a matter of personal privilege, is that really what happens in the pews of
Yes.
synagogues? In other words, when I'm giving my sermon, was your family discussing business and deciding who's going to pull the plug?
Yeah, well, not at that moment, but I kind of conflated multiple things. But I think my family, hence the title of my book, my family is kind of like the Addams family, and are very morbid. And my dad flipped out that I didn't have a will. And they talk about death a lot. It's a big, they toured cemeteries the way normal people tour colleges. And they went to the central plots and turned their nose up at it. They didn't want to schlep out there. And I was like, but you're dead. Like, who cares? They wound up getting a plot with a view of the ocean. It's the best plot in the whole place because you can really see everything.
Is that like, because it's now?
Who cares?
Is it Von Kopelman?
No. We're regular old. We were in the Jewish ghetto part of this pilgrim cemetery. We actually got rejected, and then John Kerry wrote a letter, and they rolled over some bodies. We got in at the end. But yeah, we're RIPing in a good place.
All right, so one more question about Yom Kippur. Do people really take cottage cheese when they're taking pills in order to justify it?
I think some people do. My dad, no. I fast fully, but a lot of girls, when I bitch about it, they're like, every day is Yom Kippur for me. What are you talking about? They're just like used to fasting, but I need breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and so I can't fast very well without, minor hallucinations. You never turned into a pizza. Maybe Dick Botten did.
That's a very in joke. And what about a slice of turkey? Did I ever look like a turkey?
No.
All right, I feel
Just
much
the
better.
Torah.
By the way, you do know that of all the seats at Central, I knew where your family was sitting.
Right,
and
we're closer to God.
I'm not God, but you were pretty close to me. So when we talk about all this, one of the things that I find so amazing about the Odd Mom Out is that you have a great sense of irreverence without ever being mean.
Yeah, that was something that was important to me because I feel like that's my humor in general. I mean, everyone can sometimes veer into mean-spirited, but I really didn't want the show to be that at all, and I never wanted to hurt someone's feelings. And there's so many shows in the last few years where you heard in the press that people were hurt, and I never wanted anything like that. Because I think you can satirize something, but have it be a love letter.
As you were growing up, was this your dream to be doing something like this? Did your parents think this was your future?
My dream, my dream was very schizo and all over the place. It changed every year, probably. But when I was a little girl, I definitely was always in plays, and even through college, I loved singing and acting. But the prettiest girl at Yale, who was 2 years older than me, I just thought she was going to be the biggest star because she was, beautiful, better voice, better actress, and 10 times prettier than I am. And cut to 2 years later, she was like, party of 7 right this way, and I'm too much of a snob to go through what you have to go through to be an actress, and I needed to work. I'm a workaholic, and I was never gonna pound the pavement in that way. And when my parents would have supported me, but my dad said, you can't just want to be an actress, you have to need it. And I didn't need it. That would have been great, but you can't just say, now I'm an actress and be acting. You have to audition and go through hell, and I felt like if she can't get arrested, there's no way that, a pale Jewish chick who looks like Marilyn Manson is gonna get anything.
You're much prettier. You're
Thanks.
much prettier. So you act, you produce, you sing, you dance, you write. Is there anything lacking in that palette of talent that you would like to develop?
No, I don't want to develop anything else. Whenever people say, do you want to direct? Because they always say, like, Lena Dunham directs and writes and everything. They're like, don't you want to direct? And I said, fuck no. I can't think of anything I would want to do less than direct.
Yeah. I might add that there are things that I'm going to read from your book that I will probably use euphemisms for.
Okay.
And that I'm going to continue this conversation until my voice goes.
Okay, that's fine.
Which is on the way out. One of the things that you have the amazing ability to do, certainly as I've binged several times over on Odd Mom Out, both seasons, is your ability to see something funny in everything and to kind of blow it up and explode it to make it almost beyond reality. But in doing that, you really call our attention to the reality that you began with, and that is the life of, in some ways, New York or the Upper East Side. Where do you get your ideas from?
I think they're by osmosis.
Besides watching your friends.
Yeah, well, my friends are all really, really down to earth and chill. They're all Vanessa types. I don't really roll in a fancy circle like that, but I see it because I'm steeped in it geographically, although I was just saying to someone backstage that we are actually not technically Upper East Siders. We live in Dorito, down under Roosevelt Island tram overpass. It's Midtown East. But we're not in the white glove situation lining Fifth Avenue. But I'm privy to it, and I see all of your quadruple parked Escalades outside the school. But it's not my life, but I like actually observing, because you can't, my parents I was raised in a house where my parents knew the value of $1, and my mom was raised Orthodox Jewish on the Upper West Side, on Riverside, and it was a different world for both of them. Even though my mom's a New Yorker, my dad's from Boston, they weren't raised like that. So when I would say, which my kids now say, why don't we have a country house? I was like, because mommy doesn't drive and she hates crickets. But, I just never really wanted for anything. But I think now more than ever, kids see what everyone else has. But I never really cared. I don't know. But my parents made me run in the snow to return my Blockbuster video cassette, so I didn't get the fine. Whereas other people, it was just like water. They didn't think about money.
You say that in your book, this amazing book, which everybody will have the possibility of either receiving or buying on their way out, that you were born with a somewhat low-level edit button, and that in some way, as you grew up, you just obliterated that button entirely.
Yeah.
And you told the story of when it happened, which was in wood shop or something, when you were in boarding school. Are there things that you find you actually have to edit out, that even for you it's too far or not
I'll be honest with you, no. I really just say everything. I have Tourette syndrome, I think. I just shit out whatever I want to say. But lately, people are so tense after the election, and I went into kind of a depression after the election, and I'm a really happy person, but I bought that St. John's wort shit and was practically dicing it and snorting it. And so I'll have to sometimes bite my tongue because people are so opinionated, and I would ruin a dinner party if I started getting into wars with people. So I just kind of, I do my own thing.
So you say, in the book you talk about how much of this comes from your life, and you talk about one of the pieces of advice your mom gave you is not to have one of those Hampton lives where the wife picks up the children, drives off, and leaves the husband behind.
Oh yeah, my parents never did the Hamptons marriage where they don't see each other for 3 months, or the dad takes the Crampton shitney on the weekends. And, but I feel like there was something always creepy to me because my mom said very young, I'm staying with daddy for the summer, and I think that's creepy. And she was right, and through the years, I've now realized half those guys bang on Wednesday nights. And the moms are not.
Is that play pool, or what are they?
No, no. There's special massage places on 2nd Avenue, but a lot of the women too. I just think it's not good because you get used to it. The distance, not banging the pool boy. It's not for me. I should say that. I don't judge people who do it. It's just not for me, and it's not for my parents.
What would it sound like if you did judge them?
A lot worse. I just don't think I'd be married if I did.
So, all right, let's get into some of the specifics of which, these episodes and Odd Mom Out deal with. One is called the Momzilla Zone, which you describe, or the Jill Weber describes as making me crazy. So I was wondering what, you provide a very intimate view of what it is to be pregnant and to give birth and some of the decisions and peer really literal what it's like to give birth. And you talk about some of the tensions that you have, C-section versus natural birth, nursing versus using a bottle.
Oh, yeah.
But so much of it is pressure of peers who are telling you what you should be doing.
There's other women.
Other women.
That
Right.
was really upsetting to me. I mean, I had all 3 vag, and I actually wish that I had had a C-section.
By the way, I had to read that several so.
Now your voice is really going. Yeah, I feel like I have like a toll booth down there. And a lot of women who had C's were almost like bragging that they were, a Thai 12-year-old and I'm the Holland Tunnel. And they're like, oh yeah, I had C's. And there's like a superiority. It's very subtle, but only vag people can pick up on it. And then there's the freaks who do VBAC. I'm like, why ruin 2 parts of your body? But they're like, I just want to know what it's like. I was like, it sucks. It sucks. There's like a quilting bee in your box afterwards. It sucks. You're not missing anything. But these are the freaks who want to like have it in a bathtub and all that bullshit.
By the way, I do want to take note that this is not the typical conversation I would have with a congregation.
It's not? What are you talking about? But yeah, the nursing Nazis, I don't nurse. Sorry. Call the cops. I don't nurse. It's just not for me. It felt like just not for me. But so I was walking down the street and this woman grabbed my like literally went like, way ho, like Molly Ringwald's grandmother, and like literally grabbed my cans. And she was like, how's the nursing going? And I said, oh, I don't actually nurse. And she goes, shame on you. Shame on you. And I was so alarmed. I couldn't believe someone was, it's like, we always say there's shaming. Like she actually said, shame on you. And then even my mother-in-law was like, I can't believe you're not nursing. I nursed all my babies every 2 hours and I loved it. And I would sit in front of Dynasty and I've never felt such joy. I was like, awesome. So and she's like, your kids are not gonna be warded off from certain diseases and whatever. So I was so hormonal and was crying in Volvo commercials. And I just was losing it. And I went to my amazing pediatrician, David Smith, who was my pediatrician when I was little. So Sadie, Ivy, and Fletch were his grand patients. And he was the best. And I burst into tears and said, my mother-in-law said this thing. And he goes, well, she's absolutely right. And I was like, even harder. And he goes, what she didn't tell you is that those diseases only exist in the Congo. I was like, he's like, you're in the first world. Calm down, you're fine. But I just feel like, who cares how my kids get nourishment? Like, get a fucking life.
Have you ever actually said that to someone?
Yeah, by the time I had Fletch, I didn't really care. Because I feel everyone always says, like, when you have 3 kids, motherhood is all about guilt management. And I sort of threw that out the window eventually, because I'm doing the best I can.
Is this just an Upper East Side or a New York thing, or do you think this is universal? I mean,
I think it's pretty universal, because in a smaller town, everyone knows what you're doing, whereas here you have some anonymity. But I heard that there's just as many judgments for all of it in all these places. I actually think like Greenwich and Rye are worse. Carnegie Hill is like going to Rye for me. This is like a whole new world.
I'm so surprised you didn't mention Scarsdale.
Scarsdale, yeah.
So let's go into this whole issue that you ended the chapter of Kinder, what is it called? I have it here. Kinder Gauntlet, right?
The Kinder Gauntlet.
Not that anybody here would be interested in the whole issue getting their children into the right school or nursery school or kindergarten, right?
Yes.
We're above that, right? And I'm sure there are certain people here that couldn't imagine it happening, especially at this point in their lives, this time of the year. You say, and this is a quote, for those of us who don't know it, school placement is a freaking war zone, right? There's another word you use there. And I remember that scene at the cemetery where your family is being interviewed to see whether you'll be allowed into the dead club.
Yeah.
And you're holding your phone out there just so that you can get some
the interview calls.
Get some Wi-Fi. Is it that crazy?
Yes. I actually found that
How many of you think it's that crazy? Okay.
It's crazy, but the story that's in the book was a true story, because everything in the show I had written actually before, for season 1, before I wrote this book, and so then I had to still go through it with my son, and my girls are in an all-girls school, and my son's I was applying to all boys because I loved the girls' school, and our preschool teacher said, I don't really know how to say this, but the head of the ex-missions, whatever, said, the girls' schools are K through 12, and they're very progressive and cool and diverse, and the head of the lower school lives in Alphabet City, and great, anything goes. The boys' schools are way more uptight and conservative, and I was like, yeah, so? And she said, so I would cover up your tattoos. I don't think that's gonna work in the boys' schools. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they basically told me to watch what I say and kind of basically not be myself. So I walked out on the street and I threw this teenage temper tantrum like, I can't believe that. They're trying to pumice out my personality and fuck them. And Harry's like, are you really gonna make a tantrum about this? It's your kid's school. Like, just do what they say, play the game. It's a game, just play it. Don't be ridiculous. So I was like, fine. So we went to this school where he is now, and I was schwitzing my balls off. It was 98 degrees. It was literally 98. And like the band, it's awful. So I walk out and I'm in long sleeve. I had a dress and then a blazer over it to cover my tattoos. And I was dripping sweat. I had like my first menopausal hot flash on this tour. It was awful. And I couldn't take off the jacket because they said, don't let her see it. Fine, we leave. After the tour was done, I like peeled off my blazer. It was practically sticking to me. And then I wound up going to a spin class, and the woman clicks next to me, in the bike next to me, and I'm in my tank top. And I was just gonna not say hi, but I'd just seen her a week before, and I was mortified, and I thought, I'm just gonna ignore her and put on blinders like the horses in Central Park. Sorry, Liam Neeson. And I'm gonna just, ride my bike and not engage. And then I was sort of like, screw it. And I was like, hi, how are you? I just wanted to say hello, we met last week. And she said, yes, of course. And I said, they didn't want me to show you my tattoos, so I was dying during that entire interview. So if I acted weird, it's because I was asphyxiating in my own sweat. But I was like, guess what, I have tattoos, call the cops. And she was like, tramp stamp. She had one too. It was like the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I knew that we were gonna get in because we had our ink bond.
And you said this happened in what you call the nosebleed section of Soul Cycle.
Yeah, it was like the Staten Island, like the back row that's on a riser.
Do you go there regularly?
I do, yeah. In the show, people think I hate it because I hated the idea of it and resisted for so long. I was a really late adopter, but I got into it.
So when you talk about all this happening in terms of trying to get into schools and your take on different schools, it's humorous, but is there really a judgment, an op-ed piece in this?
I think there's a vanillization of children, not just to get in, but once you're there, where they really want you to fall in line. And I was a hellcat at Spence. My parents were called into the school all the time. And I wouldn't change a thing. I feel like I couldn't think outside the box unless I knew what the box was, and I had to push those borders a lot and test my teachers, and I'm sure it was a nightmare, but that's life. Like I see some of these kids who are these little polishing their halo, and they're these mute nose pickers who don't rock the boat, but those aren't the kids that change anything. I just feel like snooze button.
All right, so So let's move from childbirth to child raising. I was fascinated by this ODD. What is it called?
Yeah, my
The
son.
oppositional defiance disorder.
I thought it was a fake disease.
Yes.
My son was diagnosed with ODD. And I literally was laughing in the person's face, the diagnostician that we pulled up a Brinks truck full of gold bars and gave her to her. Moron. It's all like the labels and the bullshit. And she's like, we have a diagnosis. Your son has ODD. And I was like, he is odd. That's so funny. And I was like, what is oppositional defiance disorder? And she goes, it means he doesn't take no for an answer. And I was like, you mean KID? You mean BOY? Like, what's your problem? Are you seriously making a disease for this? Yes. So he goes to this kiddie shrink once a week, and I'm like, what'd you do in the kiddie shrink? And he's like, we watched SpongeBob and played Legos. More gold bars. I don't get it. I mean, I'm sure that I probably had ODD too. They just didn't diagnose it in the 70s.
So do you think parents have difficulty accepting that the child is just average? And needing to find some reason to explain why they're just average, whatever that means.
I don't need a reason. The school said he has ants in his pants and he doesn't sit still, and sometimes he has listening issues, and we think you should get him evaluated. So fine, I'm hemorrhaging money to have them tell me he doesn't take no for an answer. No shit. I mean, the kid he doesn't take no for an answer, but that's kind of a good thing when you're an adult. I feel like the skill sets that are bad in grammar school are good when you're a grown-up.
Yeah. Which means we can all have hope for our children.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The worst of them are going to be just fine as adults.
I think so.
All right, so I'm fascinated by the names that children are given on your show. Yours are pretty normal. There's Miles, Dottie, and Hazel. Whereas Brooks is Shipley, McAllister, Rutherford, and Langley.
Yeah, so the waspy names, my dad always said they're reversibles. Like Wellington Rutherford could be Rutherford Wellington. And then you tack on the little 4 Roman numeral. The higher the Roman numeral, the smaller the dick. Fact. But a lot of these people have reversible names, and my dad always said, that doesn't work with Abramowitz Ari, you know? Prescott Burke, Burke Prescott. But so I wanted her to have all potential reversibles.
Now, do you like Brooke? I mean, does Jill Weber like Brooke Von Weber?
I think that she wants to, because you always want to get along with your family and see the best in them, but it's a sort of a subtle dance. I think by the end of season 2, they've connected,
Right.
They've gotten to an
Well,
okay
given
place.
what you went through in that delivery,
Yeah.
I mean, that's about the ultimate bonding.
Blood brothers, blood sisters.
So there's in the Truth Fairy, the one child comes out and says, you know, I don't believe in Santa. That's okay, but I can't stand that you're lying or lying. And then another child talks about, what do you mean that there's not a tooth fairy? And then Miles comes out and says, I hear that, or anti-Semitism is on the rise.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there's a whole discussion about how much truth you should tell your child, because you say, how do we bring them up in this, to know this cruel world and to be able to function in this world? So tell me about your thoughts in that regard.
Oh, we do our own thing. We tell everything. I just saw the movie Captain Fantastic. I really recommend it. And I love that movie. And it's such a dichotomy between this family and then his sister's family, where they sugarcoat everything, but we don't sugarcoat. I have still the print New York Times every day delivered, and there's horrible pictures, and we talk about it at breakfast, and I want them to know what's going on. I feel like that's how I grew up, and I considered myself having a pretty idyllic childhood, and I knew all that stuff, so I just feel like knowledge is power. I would never deny them what's going on. I know that sounds dark, but...
No, I don't think it's dark. I think this issue that was raised is I can't believe my parents if they're lying to me. Then even when they're telling me the truth, I may not believe them.
I never do. I always just say it out. But then I say, but you can't tell anybody at school.
Right. Don't tell Grandma and
Don't
Grandpa
ruin
what I
Santa.
just told you.
Yeah.
So this this all comes to a crux in Brooklyn. First, I'm wondering, would you ever be allowed back in Brooklyn?
Yes, I have a passport. We go every single weekend. That's sort of we don't have a country house, that's our country house, is we go to Brooklyn every weekend. And I feel like that was my road not taken originally, but when the episode is based on sort of me, all of season 1 is sort of me when I was 28 and was more overwhelmed by motherhood. And we flirted with moving to Brooklyn, but I never could have done it because my parents helped raise my children and they're 3 blocks away. So it was never really an option, but I fantasized about how much more bang for the buck you can get real estate wise. And we would go and look at these places that I just had such a real estate boner. And then now I feel like it's more expensive there. It's Upper East Side is a bargain. Well, maybe not with the new subway. It's gonna go back up.
Right. Yeah, 2nd Avenue is the new park.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But in that episode on Brooklyn, there were certain things that emerged. I remember when you said to someone's child, "What beautiful hair," and they said, "Don't say that."
That's all real.
Or how are you doing in school? No, don't.
You can't say you're smart.
No, you can't say you're smart. It's your effort, right? As I recall. And then there's the drink that you're drinking with kale and
Placenta
and
smoothie.
placenta. Placenta.
What's so funny is that that's our writers. We had writers from LA and Brooklyn, and I was the only Manhattanite. But we, originally in that scene, it was a mom nursing a 4-year-old. And we were going into production and 2 of the writers said, "We need to talk, we want to change it to 5 because we both know someone who's nursing a 4-year-old. I was like, she should be fucking arrested. That's molestation. Was the kid gonna eat a Chips Ahoy and then wash it down with tit milk? Disgusting. It was so gross. So they said, no, we would feel weird if she felt like we were judging her, so we raised it to 5. I mean, gag. But that goes on there.
Yeah.
I mean, people are really, that's a thing with the bathtub births and the nursing 5-year-olds, I guess. I mean, I think it's fucked up and gross.
I wonder what our Brooklyn friends who will watch the show would say about that.
They like it because most of them don't do that.
Yeah.
But they joke, they know that when you go to a restaurant and you hear the specials, they're, talking about the special organic, whatever pumpkin seeds from Circle Jerk Farms they have like ZZ Top beards, but they're not in ZZ Top. I call them Zach Galifianakis knockoffs. But there's so many hipsters who do all those things that even the Brooklyn residents are rolling their eyes about.
So, moving on in terms of kind of time of life, there are certain conflicts that arise, especially between you and Vanessa when it comes to, the nacho prom and her birthday.
New Yorkers against childhood obesity.
Yes, by the way, is that real?
No.
Is that real? There's not a nachos, right?
No, but there's a lot of things that are, fat.
All right, so she was talking, and in a certain way, and at some point she said, your head is so far up here that you don't even know that you're becoming that, right? The hat luncheon and what goes on. By the way, your speech at that was beautiful, especially if you're a dog owner. But so tell me about that. I mean, because that's really an adult problem, right? Your father has a great phrase for you can't dance at 2 weddings with the same tuchus,
yes.
Right? So, I mean, tell me about that conflict and what goes on in that friendship.
I really don't have it. That was the difference between, sometimes journalists will say, what's the difference between Jill Kargman and Jill Weber? I think the TV me is more searching for those kinds of answers, whereas I don't give a shit. I only go to places I want to go. I don't do anything that's an obligation. I really don't. I have very few friends that are my sisters. I don't try to dance at multiple weddings with one tuchus. I barely, I like really small, intimate things. Well, I have that fear of group dinners that we made an episode about.
Right.
I just don't want to fund everyone's alcoholism and sit there for 4.5 hours. So I used to have a thing with Harry Horizontal by Jon Stewart, and so I just would leave. I would get up and leave if I was trapped somewhere.
So in terms of, the episodes that you have, is there one that you consider the funniest of the ones that have already appeared? I mean, is there one that especially either poignant to you or especially funny or outlandish to you?
I actually love the Yom Kipp's one just because it felt so real and funny and reflective of my
Is it really
family.
called Halitosis Day?
Yes.
Uh,
I don't know why you wouldn't know that, because everyone comes and hugs you at the end, and you could like bottle that shit and ship it to Syria. It's awful. Like Yom Kippur breath is like chemical warfare.
Which may explain why everybody seems anesthetized at the end of services.
Yeah, well, I guess because everyone's coming up to you being like,
Well,
hello.
You
You're
know,
in like a beige cloud.
Actually, I'm just filled with such spiritual wonder at the end of
Right,
the rest
okay.
that I don't notice those physical things. But now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to smell for it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, bring a gas mask.
So is there one episode that's especially poignant for you?
Well, I did love the cemetery episode just because
Oh my God.
I feel like that was also kind of real, and I just think the whole thing of applying for a cemetery plot is a riot. And just the whole thing, I always wanted to do, an article or something about what would that letter be to get a letter written for you for a death co-op. Like, they'll be very quiet. The kids will only bring nice flowers, no carnations. Just like, it's so bizarre to me. But that I loved seeing that on the screen was kind of fun and surreal because it came right from my mom and dad.
Yeah, because in a certain way, we're in a society, especially in this community, where it's getting into what you can't get into.
Right.
It just makes it more desirable.
But I like the parallel between the kindergarten and then the resting place. Like it never ends.
They're not comparable, are they? No, I don't think
It's
you
probably
meant to say
just
that.
as hard now. We're running out of plots.
Right.
I'm plotsing.
So let's talk about what we started with was a little bit about Jewish identity, and you mentioned it several times. The one that's so poignant to me is when you're driving out with Andy to Montauk or the Hamptons, and he says, traffic is so good, and she says, don't you know about not tempting the traffic gods? So, are you superstitious?
I'm not, but my mom is.
She is.
Yeah, I'm not superstitious at all. But I pick it up. You just, when you're living it, you know what things you're not supposed to say to set off a superstitious person.
So in Odd Mom Out, it's surprising that this whole Jewish identity kind of seeps in to certain episodes. So how would you describe yours?
My Jewish identity is very strong, very strong. And in the show, I married Shiksa, but in real life, I'm married to an NJG, nice Jewish guy. But so that's another big difference. But we thought that when we were developing it, I had said to Andy Cohen early on, I think it highlights my otherness if I have this very waspy group of in-laws. So that was like a very early decision, because then you're just more on your own a bit in terms of those superstitions or traditions. It's not the same as when you have a partner who's kind of had a parallel life that went through the same things. But my Jewish identity is very strong, and I always wanted it to be in the show. And I think in season 1, no one ever said this explicitly, but we were definitely told to scale back on some of the Jewiness, just because I think they didn't want to alienate these like red state, rectangle-shaped state people. And they wanted
so
it
what
to
do you
be,
think about those rectangles, red state people?
They begin with the letter M and they're in the middle. But I really wanted for season 2 to have that be more vocal, and in season 3 it is again. And I'm really proud of that, because I feel like a lot of people are not Jewish and they get to see, what it's like, and that it's not as different, and you see traditions, and more so even this year, and hopefully if we get a season 4. For those of you who are superstitious.
Say,
I gotta get to season 4.
You actually say Kanahar and spit 3 times.
Yeah, in a
right?
circle.
Right.
Yeah, I gotta tackle the New York bar mitzvah scene.
And
I am combat crawling. Write your network. Tell them.
well, if you
give
need
me season 4. I gotta get there.
If you need a consultant, I'm available.
Okay, perfect.
So one of the discussions that you have with Vanessa, who I just love as a counterpoint. And in your book, you say you're actually your best friend in life, in real life, is Vanessa.
Yeah.
She just comes out and says, I don't believe in God, especially after that emergency room scene where it's filled with women whose children didn't make the schools that they wanted.
Yeah.
And they're suffering from panic, and they're breathing deeply. So and she says that. And so what does either Jill Weber or Jill Kargman think about that?
It's really interesting. Sorry, I don't want to offend you and everybody, but real Vanessa and I are the opposite. Real Vanessa believes in God and I don't. So we always talk about this because I just feel like...
and you.
Real Vanessa and I, and she's like, but why do you go to synagogue so much? I was like, I love synagogue. I think it's great. I love tradition. I love you guys. I love the cantor's voice. I love the songs. I love the tradition. And I'm Jewish. And you had actually talked about you were doing marriage counseling or something for a couple that was interfaith, and and they said something about God, and they're like, and they said, what does he have to do with it, or something like that. Maybe you can. No,
when a Jew, this, for those of you who didn't hear the sermon, what I said is that if you take, and I don't want to give it here, but if you take somebody who's brought up as a Jew and somebody who's brought up as a Christian, and you ask the two of them what they are, neither of them are practicing either one really very much. Jew's not going to synagogue, the Christian's not going to church. You ask them what they are without flinching. The Jew will say, I'm a Jew. The Christian will think about it and say, well, I was raised a.
That's true.
And then when you ask them, well, what do they think of when they think of religion? The Christian will talk about, well, it's God and faith and prayer. And the Jew will talk about identity and family and tradition
humor and tradition.
Culture. That has and when you ask the question, well, do you believe in God? The Jew will say, well, what does that have to do with anything?
That's me, because I'm so Jewish. Like, I'm Jewish, like, I mean, I had a bar mitzvah, my kids are having bar mitzvahs. I love being in our synagogue, but when I'm there, I'm not, when there's a silent prayer time, I'm like, how many more pages are in the, like, I like flip ahead, and I'm not like, hi, can I, I just don't, that's just not how my brain works. And I'm not a big science person, which is weird.
And I'm very pleased you didn't ask me what I think of when I'm doing the silent prayer, so.
Yeah. So Vanessa has a really good friend who's a Sunday school teacher at St. James, and she was like, I don't understand how you can't believe, isn't there something greater than yourself? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. Like, I just don't focus on, I have just like other shit to do. But she's very, people are in shock when I say that. But,
so, no, not shocking to me, not shocking to me. So, especially after everything we talked about before, totally not shocking to me.
Yeah.
So I know your parents, I know your husband, Harry, and I know your family, and they're quite amazing. Your parents.
You married us 15 years ago.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't introduce them. They were actually introduced by their grandmothers, as I recall.
It was so Fiddler on the Roof.
Really?
They've been playing bridge together for 50 years. It was very shtetl chic.
So your parents are very wise and funny and elegant, and I'm just wondering, just as a side comment, not really important, what do they think about all the sexual references? And
they don't care. My parents are super cool. My parents took me to Flashdance because they didn't want to see Dumbo. My parents are very open, and my mom's French, and they don't care. They never were prude like that.
So I'm going to read some of the things which in your book you talk about. I'm sorry, Ari and Coco are here somewhere, right? Your wonderful, incredible parents, as is Harry, your husband. So Ari's words to live by. I'm just going to say them the way they are. I'm just reading. This is just simply a literary exercise.
Okay.
He says, if you stir shit, it smells worse.
Yes.
Right?
That's true.
Tell me what that means.
Not that I have like a vat of shit with a butter churn or anything, but I guess that's true. No, it means that if I would say to my dad, I got in a fight with so-and-so and I feel weird about it, should I just bring it back up? And he'll say, if you stir shit, it smells worse. Like, let it go. It's like some people would say, don't pick a scab or something. So
I'm just going to read maybe one or two more. If you marry for money, you earn every penny.
Totally. Now, we say that all the time because you'll see like some obese troll guy with like tits on a stick, blonde wife. And they're walking down the street and I'm like, she's earning it. She has to bone that. It's so gross. It's so gross. I see it all the time, even with, you know, people. I feel like on a Saturday night with like maybe a lot of Pinot Noir they can deal, but then like Sunday morning and they're all over, I could vomit. I can't even. Seriously, I can't believe people do this. And I still see it all the time, where the husband is the crypt keeper. They have like, the girl's my age and the guy has like a walker with tennis balls. It's crazy.
Well, by the way, one of the things I noticed you put down as things you hate or can't understand is walkers with tennis balls.
Well, why don't they just make them with the tennis balls? Like, why do all the sons-in-law have to slash their hand with an X-Acto knife? Make them with the fucking tennis balls on them. So stupid. If I were Wilson or something, I would just come out with a line of walkers with the tennis balls already on them. Makes sense.
All right. Not to disrespect your father, but let's move on to your mother.
Okay.
So she says, Coco's words of wisdom, slow down, eat everything like it's caviar because to someone else it is.
Yes, that is it to my mom to a T. My dad and brother and I wolf like animals. We eat everything. I mean, we used to go to Chinese restaurants every Sunday night, the 11th commandment. Thou shalt go to Fortune Garden.
Do you know what part of the permutation is that on Christmas Eve you go and you go to a movie?
Yeah, totally.
Right.
We used to always do that. But my mother is very slow eater, and sometimes it drives us crazy because we're like, they're not bringing your main courses because you're still nursing your little frisee. But she eats very slowly, and she always says you have to appreciate every bite. There are people who, you know, if you wolf it down, you're missing the beauty of a lovely meal with your family, and why rush it and eat it like it's caviar. And she always says that, and it's so true. And we just got back from Africa, and we were in Botswana and Zambia and Zimbabwe. And by the way, Botswana is very diamond rich. They have nothing to eat. They have nothing. And I couldn't believe it. And so I started saying it to my kids too, because they really saw it firsthand now. It's not just like starving kids in Africa. Like they're
starving kids in Africa.
Yeah. I mean, you always hear that and know it, but we saw them, and it wasn't with like through Sally Struthers as mediator.
So let me give you one more wise words from your mom. I love this one. The opposite of a social heavy is a socialite.
Yes. My mom, I mean, I would flip through, they got every magazine when I was little, and I love magazines. And I would flip through and see just all these party pictures of pretty women in nice clothes. And I would always say to my mom, I remember I was, you know, maybe 10 or 11, I was like, you're prettier than all these people and you have better clothes and you could be in all these things if you wanted. Like my mom could be in all of that shit, and she was, no thank you. I think a socialite, that's, you know, the opposite of a social heavy is a socialite. Yeah. She said a lot of people use charity to promote themselves socially, and my mom is in Memorial Sloan Kettering every Monday with a lab coat, with rubber gloves for 21 years. She's not stuffing envelopes for a benefit committee, and that's great. If you do that, that's great, that all helps, but she gets her hands dirty. She's in the hospital. Most people show up at the plaza for a benefit, but she's in there. And I really respect that, because I do see a lot of people who just want to be the shiny, glossy party picture. And my mom could have done all that, and you know, occasionally something they support that happens, but she never pursued it. And there are all these women who hire publicists to get that, and she just thought, I can't think of anything lamer.
Yeah, and as an objective observer, I agree. I mean, your parents are just extraordinary in that regard. But I do want to come back to how we, in a certain way, we began, which is the beginning of your book, and especially the title comes, Sprinkle Glitter on My Grave, from something that your daughter said to you.
Yes, Ivy Kargman. We went to, this I think is what began our whole cemetery craziness. So my mom grew up going to Shereth Israel. A lot of my cousins are here tonight, Shereth Israel. But the women sat upstairs, and I would go with my mom, you know, a couple times a year. And I couldn't understand a thing these dudes were saying, because it's all Hebrew, and it's all dudes, oh, by the way. And the women would just sit and sort of chit-chat upstairs. But I found that their plot of their cemetery area is in like deep Queens. Like JFK is, the planes are like shitting out the food stuff under. It's kind of bleak. So sadly, my aunt, who I loved so much, died a couple years ago, 3 years ago, and it was awful. And we went to her funeral at the Sherith Israel land in Queens. And my daughter's kind of Wednesday Addams. The other two wanted to stay home. It was January, it was freezing, bleak, horrible January day. And the other two were home, and Ivy said, "I'm coming to the cemetery." And I said, okay. And she has 2 braids. I mean, she is Wednesday. And I was like, "Are you sure? It's freezing." "I'm coming." So she gets in the car with us, and we get there, and it is sleet, like nonstop sleet. And we're standing there freezing. And some people put the stones on the tombstones and the little pebbles, and then some people had flowers, and they were all dead. And Ivy said, "Why do people put flowers on a grave? That's so depressing, because they die in 2 seconds." I was like, "Well, I guess it's life, but I know they die. It's color in a stone garden. I don't know." I didn't really have an answer. And she's like, "That's such a bad idea. When you die, I'm going to sprinkle glitter on your grave because it's very hard to clean up." So there's actually a company, shipoureenemiesglitter.com. You can send people an envelope and they rip it open and glitter just. I think my son still, I'll brush his hair and just still see like a piece of glitter from some craft studio party. But yeah, so I thought that was kind of great. So I realized that was my book title.
But you talked about that there was discussion, especially your father very often would talk about death and what it meant, and then your I guess former sister-in-law, but you're still your sister in some way,
she's
Barrymore
sister
said,
for life.
Right, she said, you just have to wait 17 minutes at a Kopelman dinner and you're going to talk about death.
Yeah, like we would be talking, my dad's like, "Guess who has stage 4 pancreatic?" And she'd be like, "Oh, 9 minutes, 9 minutes." She would always clock when we went there. Because it was always like the Grim Reaper buzzing from the lobby.
And then you would talk about when Harry went to go swimming with the sharks.
Yes.
And
Harry's like not a Jew. I don't get it. He's a Jew, but he jumps out of planes. I mean, he skied for the United States. He was internationally ranked and not good enough for the Olympics. He was like just cut, but by like 600ths of a second or some bullshit. But he skied for the US in Europe and was on these FIS racing teams. And I think when he gave that all up and started a more urban life and got married and had 3 children, there's some itch that he continually needs to scratch. So we went to Gansby, South Africa, which is the great white shark capital of the world. This was like 15 years ago. And he swam with all these great white sharks. And I'm sitting there like, if you get eaten, no one feels bad for the widow. They're like, "Yeah, you went swimming with great white sharks, you fucking idiot." I was like, life is precious. I mean, I grew up in a house where life is very precious. And we talk about that all the time. You don't go like jump out of a plane. So he does all that. I don't get it, but
well, you call him, I think, an adrenaline addict.
Yeah, he is.
And you also talk about it as the most, I think, I couldn't find the quote, but most adaptive person that you.
He is. You can take Harry anywhere, and he floats. I can take him anywhere. He's so easygoing, and he's kind of the opposite of me. I'm not easygoing.
No.
Well, I really don't. I get very trapped. And we'll have codes, I'll say like cul-de-sac or something, meaning like, I also have SPD, suburban panic disorder. And I go crazy in the suburbs, like I start to itch. I would be dangling from a noose in Greenwich, Connecticut. Like, seriously, like I'd rather be in a 5th floor walk-up with like roach motels in the city than like Round Hill, like Rye on the water. I would be like, "Siri, how do I concoct poison out of households?" I go crazy, but he can deal. If I had said, "I'm moving to Greenwich," he would be like, "Okay." But we, on our second date, he said, "Yeah, I don't think I could ever raise kids in New York City." And I was like, "Check, we're gonna get the check, thank you." Taxi, and he was, he's very flexible.
But in response to that, and this is, I think, what you wrote in the book, so enjoy what you have, relish your feet on the ground before you inevitably wind up in it,
Yeah.
right? Meaning in the ground. Is that kind of your kind of philosophy, your
Yes.
motto for life?
I mean, I think I'm pretty much one of the happiest people I know. And I think it's because, I mean, not less so since the election when I'm like pounding handfuls of St. John's wort, but I think that I generally am really happy, and I think it's because I think that this is it. You know, I don't believe in it. I have a really, really close, one of my best friends from high school was a bridesmaid in my wedding who loves you, who's very spiritual, and she believes that you have past lives and future lives. Like, she truly believes that, and I truly don't. So it's sometimes it's hard, but we just both like laugh at each other.
Well, you know, one of the things I use, one of your chapters is why will I always love the Upper East Side? And included in that list is even our beggars are choosers.
Yes.
All right.
It's true. A guy turned down a sandwich because it didn't have Russian dressing.
And you said you can feel okay about plastic surgery.
Well, yeah, because there's always someone that looks worse.
Right.
But no one's shaming you about that shit.
And for you, we've got a joint where everybody knows your name. I'm not going to mention that restaurant, but because then we wouldn't be able to find a table, right?
Yeah,
but
we're neighbors.
you do have something about Upper East Side restaurants, this omakase or whatever, the Japanese restaurant where the last course was an empty eggshell.
Yeah.
I mean, and the philosophy behind. I mean, tell me what kind of restaurants you do like, and what is it about the Upper East Side?
I mean, my bullshit detector is like hair trigger, so I cannot deal with any of. I mean, I have many rules about that. There's another one with the waiter saying, "I'll take your order. You can start." And I was like, "Don't you need a pen?" And he's like, "Nope, I memorize Shakespeare. I do this every day. Shoot." And I'm like, I have substitutions and sides and things. Like, I get a panic attack when waiters don't write shit down. I want to strangle them. It's like, you're not getting like more of a tip because you memorized it. What, like, write it down. It drives me nuts. A lot of waiters do that. I like the just intimate, cool, no pomposity, no obnoxious hostesses, just easy. And I don't do any restaurants that don't honor reservations. Like, I love the food at Elios, but I stopped going because I would have an 8 o'clock table and it was 8:45, and there's still, this isn't Barcelona. Like, I'm not eating at 9 o'clock. I hate that. So I stay pretty local. And my husband works in the East Village, and my office is on Broome Street, so we usually actually eat downtown.
So just to conclude this part before we go to some of the questions that people have asked,
Okay.
at the end of the first season, there is a line in which you say, "I can't exaggerate about it up here," meaning the Upper East Side. Are you ever going to run out of material? Just
Never. Never. I could write 30 seasons. I could do Odd Grandma Out. I would do it too. I love it. You cannot run out of material. It just never ends.
Did you pick up something tonight that you might write about?
Not really, but I'm going to come back. Someone invited me to come to drop off at the elevator line.
Drop off at the...
Like the elevator at the school.
Oh.
They said you could get material, you should come back. But I went to a Y party, a friend of mine's kid was here, and I just showed up. I looked like I got shat out of Urban Outfitters. And I was just like a sloth. I had like an army jacket and black flats, whatever. People were decked. They were all like blowouts, 6-inch stilettos, and fur coats for a toddler birthday party and some romper room type shit.
Yeah.
I was like, it reminded me, you know that joke, what did one mink say to the other mink at the mink farm? They're being pulled apart, and he's like, "See you in shul." That's what I think of the Y. But yeah. But yeah, my Y friends, I love all my Y friends. They're very down to earth, but they all have stories about some of the classmates who are.
Do you have any explanation for the fact that I never heard that joke before?
No.
All right, so here are some questions. Which episode was the most fun to shoot?
Okay, it was definitely the episode that Drew was in. It was, because I had Kiss makeup, I had a big star on my face like Paul Stanley from Kiss, and I just liked walking around with looking like a total train wreck.
So, are your children funny?
They're hilarious. They are all three comic genius. Like, we cry laughing at the things that come out of their mouth. They're hilarious.
All right, so this I think you may have answered, but have you ever considered living downtown?
I lived downtown with my ex-primate. We lived downtown, and I thought it was cool and fun, and then I couldn't figure it out. Like, I was starting to itch. I was like, something's missing. And I realized, like, Central Park is the lung of Manhattan, and my parents were like, you never hang out in the park. And I was like, but I like knowing it's there.
So here's a theological question, unusual. What is your favorite plague mentioned during the Passover Seder?
That's so good.
Don't say death of the firstborn.
No, I can't do anything with bugs. I guess cattle disease, because I don't even eat beef. Like, if I had to wish one upon myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
That one. Cattle.
Yeah, I don't care if they don't.
Okay.
I love leather.
Well, you'll meet that in shul as well.
Yeah.
So what other contemporary authors do you admire and why?
I'm reading Lena Dunham's book right now. I love it. I think it's so great. And I love Amy Schumer, too. I really love Sloane Crosley. She's a writer, another writer of essays that I really admire. And actually, Nick Stern, his parents are here, and he introduced me to her, and I was gushing all over her like a fangirl, because she's hilarious. She wrote a book called I Thought There'd Be Cake. It's great. It's super funny. And yeah, I jump around, but lately I'm in the essay mood.
Yeah. By the way, one of the things you said you hate in the book is cake.
I hate cake.
You hate cake.
Yeah. I like ice cream.
So you could get cake a la mode and just not eat the cake.
I just am not a cake person. I like brownies, I like cookies. I'm just not into cake.
By the way, one of the funniest things, I have to just say this as an aside before, your Uber episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's Real Vanessa. So Real Vanessa, my best friend is Andy. She freaks about her Uber rating. And I was like, who cares? But she was so panicked about her Uber rating that she started giving them $10 every time she got out. So crazy.
So we were at dinner, Carrie and I were at dinner with two other couples when we didn't know about Uber ratings, and they were discussing theirs, of typical type A New York Jewish, competition. We went home, checked on, I had a 5.
Oh, I didn't know you can know. I thought they know.
Oh, no, you can know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is why your husband on air started to bring brownies to the drivers.
Because he would ask them. But normally, I thought that they have to tell you.
No, you can go on.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you're probably going to run right home.
Like a bad person that I don't care?
No.
I'm always nice to them. I just sometimes want to do my phone and they want to chat, and that's when I'm sure I get lower.
So don't worry about it. We're not going to look.
Okay.
So here, I think, is our last question, and then we'll wrap it up because we're running out of time. How do you manage work, raising 3 kids, and being a great wife, friend, sister, daughter? What is your secret?
I don't. I'm a shitty wife and daughter. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I have no answer for that. I just do the best I can, and I'm probably screwing up all the time. But I just feel like I just do it. I don't know. I never thought of it any other way. And I also always worked, so I never really had a break. I was kind of a double agent at school because I was at pickup and drop off, but I was also had this life writing books. But so the stay-at-home moms would say, how lame is it that so-and-so misses everything? It's so pathetic. She's just missing her child's life. And then the working moms are like, how lame are those playground moms who sit there and gossip? It's so boring, get a life. And so I heard both sides, and I was kind of neither or both, I don't know. But I just always kind of just did it my weird way. But I was lucky because I have a job that you don't have to show up at an office 9 to 5. Now I do, but they're older. But I was just home and working from home, which isn't easy either, but I don't know.
So objectively, I would tell you, Jill, I find you amazing. You're beautiful, you're smart, you're wise, you're funny, you can be irreverent and not be mean. You're tremendously creative. What?
I'm burning in hell.
You're not going to burn in hell. I would be, if so, I'd be glad to be next to you laughing.
Awesome.
But I just want to thank you for having shared yourself with us, and we look forward to season 4.
Thank you so much. You're the best. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And I just just wanted to say to you all, thank you for schlepping in January. I'm normally in my pajamas at this time, so I know how busy that New Yorkers are, so it really means a lot you took the time to come. Thank you so much.
And please go find a book, and we'll be out there.